The United States is moving with new urgency to shore up its supplies of critical minerals, a sector that has become a fault line in the broader geopolitical contest with China. That sense of vulnerability has only deepened since Donald Trump's re-election, which has sharpened tensions between Washington and Beijing across trade, technology, and security. The latest reminder of how exposed the U.S. remains came this week when China abruptly slashed exports of rare earth magnets by 75%. A move that forced some American automakers to idle production lines and underscored Beijing's leverage. Against this backdrop, few relationships are more strategically significant than the U.S. partnership with Canada, a neighbor whose vast resource base could help Washington reduce its dependence on Chinese supply chains. According to a Reader report, the U.S. Department of Defense plans to purchase up to $500 million U.S. worth of cobalt over the next 5 years to build up its defense stockpiles. Only 3 companies have been invited to bid. Vale Canada, the Toronto-based subsidiary of the Brazilian mining conglomerate that is among the world's top producers of nickel and cobalt. Glencore, the Switzerland-based giant with extensive operations tied into Canadian Supply and Jervois Global, which runs cobalt projects in North America that include significant Canadian links. The inclusion of Vale Canada on this shortlist is more than symbolic. It signals the degree to which Canadian production is woven into Washington's long-term planning and highlights Ottawa's emerging role as an indispensable partner in the effort to secure supply chains for defense and clean energy industries. For ordinary consumers, the implications are equally profound. Critical minerals such as cobalt, lithium, and rare earths are not only used in missiles or submarines, they are also the building blocks of everyday technologies, the lithium-ion batteries and smartphones and laptops, the magnets and wind turbines, the semiconductors and cars, and even the medical devices that hospitals rely on. A shortage of these resources doesn't just threaten the Pentagon's readiness. It can ripple through supply chains, drive up prices for consumer electronics, delay the rollout of affordable electric vehicles, and slow the transition to cleaner energy systems that millions of households are counting on. In short, what might appear to be an abstract issue of geopolitics touches daily life in tangible ways. From the cost of a family car to the reliability of an MRI machine, the U.S. sense of urgency is easy to understand. Washington has spent years warning about over-reliance on Chinese minerals, but the events of this summer demonstrated how quickly Beijing can weaponize its dominance in the sector. When China tightened export controls on rare earth magnets in June, it sent shockwaves through global manufacturing networks and left U.S. industry scrambling for substitutes. The Biden administration had begun laying some groundwork to expand domestic capacity, but Trump's second term has accelerated the push. In March, he invoked emergency powers to spur exploration, refining, and recycling projects at home. Even so, America's own mineral reserves remain limited, and new processing facilities face lengthy permitting battles. For the foreseeable future, the U.S. will not be able to meet demand alone. Canadian cooperation, therefore, is not just helpful, it is essential. Canada is unusually well positioned to fill that gap. It possesses more than 60 different minerals and metals with over 200 operating mines across its territory, and nearly 130 new projects already under development. Of the 23 critical minerals identified by Washington as vital to defense and high-tech industries, Ottawa can supply 22. Recognizing the leverage this confers, Canada has pledged nearly 4 billion Canadian dollars since 2022 to expand mining, refining, and recycling. These investments are designed not only to capitalize on the global energy transition, but also to entrench Canada as a pillar of North America's defense and industrial security architecture. These pledges are translating into concrete projects. In Ontario, construction is moving forward on what is set to become North America's only cobalt sulfate refinery, with more than $20 million in support from the Pentagon. The facility will provide a domestic source of battery-grade cobalt for electric vehicles and defense applications, reducing reliance on Asian supply chains. In Saskatchewan, a rare earth processing plant has come online with the capacity to produce enough material for 500,000 electric vehicles each year. Such investments represent far more than incremental progress. They mark a structural shift toward a continental supply base designed to reduce vulnerability to external shocks. Washington has also begun deploying its Defense Production Act to fund Canadian companies directly. Fortune Minerals secured $6.4 million, US supplemented by 5.66 million Canadian dollars from Ottawa to advance a cobalt gold bismuth copper project in the Northwest Territories. Lamaco Metals received 8.3 million US, along with 3.6 million Canadian dollars in Canadian government funding to accelerate graphite development in Quebec. These investments highlight the extent to which U.S. officials now see Canadian projects not as foreign ventures, but as integral components of America's defense industrial ecosystem. Yet, despite this momentum, the existing trade framework remains ill-suited to sustain such cooperation over the long term. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, renegotiated under Trump in 2018, focused heavily on labor rules, automotive content, and tariff protections. It made no dedicated provisions for critical minerals, an omission that today appears increasingly glaring as demand for cobalt, nickel, lithium, and rare earth elements surges. Without harmonized tariffs, coordinated procurement policies, and joint financing mechanisms, North America's supply chains risk remaining fragmented. A vulnerability that undercuts the very resilience both governments insist is essential. While Ottawa has already acted, launching a national critical mineral strategy and pumping billions into exploration and processing, Washington's response has been more piecemeal. Without a coherent institutional framework embedded in trade agreements, the U.S. risks falling short of its own supply chain security goals. The imbalance in the partnership makes the stakes even clearer. Canada, with its resource abundance and reputation for stable governance, has attractive options beyond its southern neighbor. European and Asian nations themselves, eager to reduce reliance on China, are courting Canadian suppliers. If Washington leans too heavily on protectionist measures, it risks pushing Ottawa to diversify its export markets. The U.S., in contrast, has fewer alternatives. Domestic mining projects face long lead times, intense regulatory hurdles, and environmental opposition. In practice, that means Canada could more easily look elsewhere for buyers than the U.S. could for suppliers. This asymmetry underscores the risk of inaction. Failing to update the USMCA to enshrine mineral cooperation would leave the U.S. more vulnerable than Canada to future supply shocks. For American defense contractors, it could mean higher procurement costs, delays in producing advanced weapons, and further exposure to Chinese export decisions. For the U.S. auto industry, it could slow the rollout of electric vehicles at a time when global competitors are racing ahead. Canada, meanwhile, would still be able to market its critical minerals to Europe, Japan, South Korea, and other partners eager to secure stable supplies. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. As an independent channel, we don't have corporate backing. We rely on your support to keep going. If you found this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps more people find our work. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Check out the next video on your screen. We picked it just for you.